Director of Project Play Western New York, and welcome to our conversation about equipping coaches to be leaders. There are approximately 5.8 million youth sport coaches in our country. According to data from Project Play, about 2/3 of these coaches are volunteers, and more than one half of them are parents. Through their training, preparation, communication, and attitude, coaches shape a young person's experience with sports for a lifetime. Given our shared goals of ensuring more young people get and stay engaged in sports and physical activity, I'm joined today by Ben Sherwood, founder and CEO of MOJO, to talk about how we can collectively empower coaches to be leaders. Welcome, Ben. How are you doing today?
Great to be here, Daycia. Thank you.
Getting down to some of our topics for today, what do you think really attracts people to coaching, specifically in youth sports?
So first of all, I just want to say I have a bunch of humility about all of the questions about coaching in youth sports. I have 12 years of my own experience, and at MOJO, we've been at this since February when our app launched to help make coaching easy, stress-free, and fun for parents everywhere. And so in answer to the question, why did parents coach? I think it's the reasons that are pretty straightforward. You want to be close to your kids. You want to give them the love of sports. You want to help them learn and grow, and you want them to develop all of the benefits that come from youth sports. You want some physical activity yourself, but most of all, I think that there's a generous motive in wanting to coach. You want to help kids grow and develop all these different great habits, but I think there's a selfish motive. And I think that parents are as transformed by the youth sports experience as the kids themselves. And that's certainly something that I've observed. I've seen coaches go from being novices to being commissioners of the league in about 5 years because they fall in love with youth sports. They fall in love with the feeling out there on the field. They fall in love with the pizza and the ice cream afterwards, and they want to give that feeling to more families everywhere. It's definitely. What about you? What do you think, Daycia? Why do you think people coach?
And I think I piggyback on everything you're saying. As a personal experience, it started out selfish. I really wanted my daughters to have an experience with competitive sports, and there weren't enough coaches for girls' leagues, so I volunteered. Um, and the transition is why I continued. And that's where it became more selfless, is after that season, it really wasn't about my girls, it wasn't about, as we said, the Dubs. It was really about the experience that we had together, that I had a joint experience with the families that were involved in this team. I had newfound kids that ran up to me my first time coaching with a running group. They always would tell me how great their run was. They would tell me about every single run they've had since then. And with my families, with the parents, I would reach out to them even afterwards and find out, I'm excited about what school they're going to. I'm excited about what other sports they might have been introduced to outside of the ones I coached. So that community that was built is the reason why I continue to come back over and over again. And I'm sure it's not an isolated experience. I'm certain that most youth sport coaches, like you said, they fall in love with the pizza and the ice cream sundaes, or we had root beer floats. But those experiences outside, off the court, off the field, outside of the planned plays, are the highlights. I do want to double back. You mentioned starting from that first step into the youth sport realm. What would you say makes it difficult for volunteers to really make the commitment to be a coach for a full season?
So there's a whole bunch of pain points involved in coaching. And to me, the first is that despite all the best intentions, despite being really well-meaning, everybody's stretched for time. And everybody's jammed when it comes to work and family and all these commitments. And so the number one reason that I hear and that our research shows about the stressor when it comes to volunteer coaching and the pain point is time. I just don't have the time. It's going to take me too much time. I don't have time to prepare a practice. I don't have time to go to practice. I don't have time on the weekends. And so one of the things that at MOJO we're trying to solve for is the time challenge. We're trying to take all the time up front out of this experience so that you can put the time in where it really matters most, which is one practice or two practices a week in a game. And so you're not having to spend a lot of time researching, trying to find the right curriculum, trying to find the right activities. I think another big challenge, quite honestly, is resources and cost. You know, there's a huge inequality problem in youth sports that you know extremely well. This problem has been exacerbated by the pandemic. The gap between haves and have-nots is getting bigger in youth sports. Families that have money can hire private coaches. Families that have money can figure it out. And the families that don't have resources are left behind. So about 2/3 of the kids from families that have resources are playing organized sports, and only about 1/3 of the families, kids in the lowest quintile, are playing sports, which is unfair. And that's not okay. And so I think that economics drives a lot of these decisions about coaching. Can you afford the time? Can you afford to do that? And what's your perspective on that, Daycia? Why do you think, what are the biggest pain points in terms of volunteers getting involved in coaching?
I completely agree with you. My first season coaching a running team, the hardest thing was managing, preparing for the practice. You can't give them the exact same drill every single time, or else they'll be completely disengaged. And there's still a full workday. So you're coming from your workday and trying to switch hats and trying to make sure you're prepared, and you might need to bring water and snacks. And so you're trying to swing by the grocery store as quick as possible. And you still need to be the first one on the field before the kids get there. So there's a time constraint. And in all of that, unfortunately, a lot of times there's so much energy that's expended in advance of the practice that the kids are not getting your full self. They're not getting 100% of the energy. They're not getting 100% of the passion that you have for the sport, because you're juggling so many balls. And unfortunately, a lot of times, who shows up at the practice is not your best self, because you're so worried about all of those intricacies. That um, where can, when you see your bridge of from that first point and how where you are now, how did you develop that comfort level and find the training? Since
You don't send a volunteer into the math classroom with 5-year-olds or 8-year-olds or 10-year-olds to teach math. And you don't send a volunteer into a classroom to teach English or history. But for some reason in this country, and for some reason in many places in the world, we send volunteers with no training, with a PDF from 1994 or a YouTube video from 2006. We send them out to the field to teach sports and to be coaches and to help kids in something that is crucial to their growth and to their development. And for some reason we think that's okay. And for some reason we think it's all right, that's kind of good luck to you. You'll figure this out. What did I do on my journey? I did what I did. I was a journalist for most of my life, Daycia, as you know, and I'm an investigative journalist when I was getting into the business. And so I just went out and I learned as much as I could, and I talked to as many experts as I could, and I've watched coaches who were really successful, and I watched a lot of videos, and I just did a lot of work. And I kept on thinking at every step with each new sport, oh, now I got to do basketball. Oh, no, I got to start from scratch. And now it's time for baseball. And now it's time for flag football. I kept thinking it's got to be easier than this. There's got to be a solution. There's got to be one stop shop where you can get all of this, and there isn't. And as you know, I come from Disney. I worked at the Walt Disney Company for many years, and one of my jobs was overseeing the Disney channels around the world. I worked with an amazing team to serve about 700 million families around the world with kids between the ages of 2 and 11. And I looked at all the thought and effort and leadership that Gary Marsh, the president of the Disney channels, and his team put into every single part of that journey for families with little kids who are 2 and 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds, and how 2-year-old boys and girls are different from 5-year-olds and 11-year-olds, and all this thoughtfulness and purposefulness. And I thought, what if we were to do that for youth sports? What if we were to try to build a resource for families on that journey with kids who are little and getting older and more sophisticated and growing? And what if we developed the most trusted resource for hundreds of millions of families around the world who love sports, who want their kids to play sports, but don't have anywhere to turn? They just have to make it up themselves. They have to figure it out themselves. And so that's where this idea for MOJO was born. Let's bring the very best technology together. Let's bring the very best content together. Let's put this all together, the best experts. We're proud that we partnered as coaching research partners with Aspen, to research and look at data to figure out what really are the best practices, what are the best ways to deliver a great coaching experience to kids of all these different age groups.
From your experiences with youth sports, thinking about some of your previous youth sport coaches, what do you think it looks like to be a good leader as a youth sport coach? And then how can Mojo help support that investment?
When I think about my own adventures in sports, I was a pretty bad athlete as a kid. I was afraid of the ball. I was just afraid of every ball. I was afraid of getting hit by a pitch. I was afraid of getting kicked. I was just afraid. And when I think about Mr. Franklin, who was my Little League coach on the Phillies, I think about a wonderful and warm person who didn't care that I struck out against the Reds with the game on the line, and who didn't care that I dropped the fly ball in right field when everything was on the line, and who believed that I was worth something even though I wasn't a very good baseball player. And I think that I extrapolate from that lesson from Dick Franklin, Mr. Franklin, who I still see around town and I still feel an incredible amount of debt to. I extrapolate from that the most important thing in coaching is to see the kid and to understand the kid and to meet the kid where the kid is. And then what you're really doing is you're coaching a kid first, and then you're coaching the sport.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
It's great. Great to be with you. And we'll see you soon.